Well, hey there, everybody. We'd like to invite you to visit South Dakota through the eyes of local Lou. She'll take you on a tour of lots of things to see and do. So enjoy your virtual visit through the eyes of local Lou.
Hi, and welcome to the Local Lou podcast. I am so glad that you guys came back. In our last episode, we talked a little bit about the history of the State Theater, and then we talked to Allison Weiland, the executive director there. But today I wanted to talk more about the construction company that built the State Theater. I think this is a really interesting part of the history, and honestly, the company's origin story is just so very South Dakota, very Sioux Falls, a lot of humble, hardworking, built on grit kind of people. So it was really fun to look into this construction company. Picture this. It is right around 1900. And honestly, you're going to have to accept that general date because I found a few different years for this. I guess I kind of know vaguely when this happened. 1900, 1901, 1902. It's one of those. Because it's pretty undisputed that Henry was 18 when he came to America, but I found his birthplace stated as different places. I found a couple year discrepancies. I mean, all of these things happen when you're researching, and we're not writing a book. So I am just going to take this date range and run with it. But it's right around 1900, and a young guy named Henry Carlson, and I guess we can say 18-year-old named Henry Carlson, steps off a ship from Sweden and he lands in the United States. And he gets to work the only way he really knows how, with his hands. And he starts as a laborer, he becomes a stonemason, and he slowly builds a really deep understanding of construction. Fast forward to 1919, Henry's here in Sioux Falls, and he teams up with a man named William Snitke. Together, they start a construction company, but by 1924, Henry Carlson has his own construction company. Okay, so 1924, Henry Carlson company is a thing, and this is where the story really starts to build. So by 1930, this once tiny operation became like the largest in the state of South Dakota. For construction companies. So that's like amazing. Henry Carlson didn't just build buildings, he shaped a lot of skylines, and not just here in Sioux Falls. We're talking about all over the place. So we have Columbus College, now the VA here in Sioux Falls, the historic Alex Johnson Hotel in Rapid City, the State Capitol Annex in Pierre, the original Washington High School. So basically, if you're in South Dakota in the early 1900s and you walked into an important building, there is a pretty good chance that Carlson had something to do with it. So then comes the next generation, Henry Carlson Jr., and he starts out kind of the same way as a laborer and goes off to serve in World War II. When he returns from the war, he eventually will take over as president of the company when his dad passes away. But the momentum kept building with the company. They have projects like the Sioux Falls Arena, which honestly, when I was looking this up, I right away was just like, oh my gosh, the arena was beautiful. Like, you forget, especially for the time period, and just the building was just the shape, and it's just so cool. So they were behind that. Let's see, the Minnehaha County Courthouse, which is now like the admin building, like if you're going to register a car. I mean, they do other stuff, register to vote, blah, blah, blah. It's a busy building. Let's see, the public safety building, additions to Sioux Valley Hospital, and they just kept building. And it's really cool because they are building these pieces of Sioux Falls history, like one building at a time. It's really neat. When we move into the third generation, so this is the current guy in charge, that is going to be Henry Chip Carlson the third. He starts as a carpenter's apprentice in the 70s. He goes to school for construction management, joins the leadership of the construction company afterwards. I mean, with this kind of lineage, these are really good career choices. I mean, he definitely knew what he was going to be when he grew up. And, the company starts to shape the modern Sioux Falls too. It's not just history buildings in the past. No, they're still doing stuff. We have the Sanford Children's Hospital, the Sanford Heart Hospital, Vance Thompson Vision, the Augustana Froiland Science Complex. It's funny. I was so scared I was going to say Froiland wrong that I couldn't say science. And then in 2017, the company officially becomes Henry Carlson Construction LLC, and Chip is, leading the way. Go Chip. What's cool about this is they have like this whole section on their website. Now it goes into their personal history and stuff. I did try to fact check some of these dates like we talked about at the beginning. And I love that they have their history on their webpage. I love that this is a family owned business that is still going and growing. And I wanted to maybe read Carlson's obituary. Here's the deal, like I found something else I kind of want to read too. So I'm really okay. I'm gonna pull them up, but I'm only gonna read one because this is already gonna be a long episode and I don't want to just stall your day like this, guys. Okay, here's the deal. I found a book. And let's see. It's by the same guy that did the history of Minnehaha County. Let's see. South Dakota, Stressing the Unique and Dramatic in South Dakota History by Dane Robinson. Don't know how to say his first name, but it's just like, it's cool and it's a really good part of the book, but the obituary is really well done too. And what I really extra super duper love is both the obituary and the book reference his wife and his family, and it names them. And I love that. I will say when Henry Carlson dies in 1961, this is front page news, and not just in Sioux Falls. It's front page news in Mitchell. It's front page news in all these little communities because a lot of these places have buildings by Henry Carlson Construction. So it's really cool to see the impact that he had and built here. I know I've said built probably 8 times. Sorry, guys. I was just looking at the obituary again, and it talks about how he suffered a heart attack around 8 in the morning, and his wife was making breakfast, and they had plans to go on a vacation to Phoenix in a few days. So, I mean, he was 77 when he passed away. And yeah, it sounds like he had such a cool life. And his obituary, talks about him immigrating when he's 18 from Sweden. But let's go ahead. You know what? No, let's read the book. Okay, so it says Henry Carlson is president of Henry Carlson Company, general contractors. This firm, which has business offices both in Sioux Falls and Rapid City, has carried out so much important work that a number of large towns and cities in this state have substantial evidence of its activities. Henry Carlson is in every sense of a master builder and a very able businessman. The keynote of his success has been steady, long, and continued industry and measuring up to the opportunities as they have presented themselves. He was born in Sweden, so they say Westmanland, Sweden, and the Argus Leader obituary has a different place in Sweden. Let me pull that bad boy up. I mean, again, we're not writing a book, so we don't have to go like that extra step that would be involved, like getting a genealogical society involved or finding like a birth certificate, or you know what I mean? Like this, we're just gonna take this as it is. Okay, yeah, they say he was born in Skinnskatteberg. I don't know how to say it, Sweden. But yeah, so I don't know. He was born in Sweden, August 15th, 1883, son of Andrew and Hedwig Carlson. His early advantages were limited to common schooling. When he left home at the age of 18, he came to America. He was without capital, even borrowing money to get to the land of opportunity. How cool is that? He arrived in Sioux Falls in 1902 and worked there as a laborer in construction. He learned the trade of bricklayer and accomplished the first important stage towards success when he made building superintendent. He soon took on small construction jobs for himself and from that developed this contracting business. I mean, guys, this is real American dream stuff. It's so cool. And I felt like we needed to talk about them. We needed to talk about who built this theater. And kind of the reason I'm sharing all this is because when you sit inside the restored State Theater, the craftsmanship, the legacy, the care, none of that exists without these bones by Henry Carlson. And just the fingerprints of the Carlsons are all over Sioux Falls history, which is really cool. In the State Theater, it's just one gem in the whole crown of work that they've done across our city, across the state of South Dakota. And, local history, it's not just about buildings, it's about the people that built them, the people that lived in them. So much of South Dakota is built by immigrants who took a chance, people that came here for opportunity and just kept going. Yeah, these hands shaped what Sioux Falls would grow into, which is really cool. In the State Theater, it's just such a great example, again, of legacy. It was built with purpose, it was restored with passion, and it's shared with all of us. Okay, after diving into the history of the construction company behind the iconic State Theater, it's only fitting that we shine a spotlight on someone who practically lives there. Today, we're going to get to know Derrick Veurink. Derrick is a true State Theater staple, like butter on popcorn or that classic glow from the marquee. And while I don't have any official numbers, I'm pretty sure the only being that has seen more movies in that theater would have to be a ghost that's been there since it was built. So Derek is a full-fledged cinephile. He's gaga for movies, right? And he doesn't just watch movies, he celebrates them, he shows up for them. And I'm just really endlessly impressed by how he keeps track of it all, to be honest. Don't even get me started on its DVD collection. It's pretty legendary. Now, I do have to say, I can't just say that and not mention Corey Jacobson, somewhat random movie collection. He has since passed away, but his DVD collection, so magnificent, so legendary, so random. So, anyways, but I would say him and Derek were probably rivals when it comes to DVD collections. I'm sure Derek has surpassed him now. Derek is proof that physical media will never really go away. It's just, yeah, it's not going to go away. It's just waiting for its sequel. And that's kind of happening right now. People are really into analog again, which I love. So let's settle in and let's get to know the man who treats the State Theater like a second home and the movie screen like an old friend. Awesome. Well, welcome to the Local Lou podcast. Today we have a guest, which is really exciting. And it is, well, gosh, I didn't even ask. Should I use your last name, Derek?
You're allowed. You're
Am
allowed.
I? Okay. So how would I say your last name?
Well, I pronounce it as Veurink. It's a Dutch name.
Yeah.
So I really get to get the ers and the ns and in there and all that stuff.
Veurink. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Did I? Maybe.
Well, I'll be honest. I've heard like 1,000 different permutations of my name over the years.
I was wondering.
You're like 99.9% there. So
Okay.
you're good. You're good.
Enough. Great. So Derrick Veurink is the metaphorical number one patron of the State Theater. And you can also find him talking. Let's see. I know you're on Fat Dude Digs Flicks for the Criterion Collection.
Yes.
I feel like there's another one too.
There's a general non-criterion podcast that I do with Andy and Blake called The Balcony,
There we
where we
go. The
talk about,
balcony.
yeah, for everything that's not in the Criterion
Yeah.
collections.
For the less fancy movies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which it's really fun, like movie information, just guys talking about movies that they saw. So it's a really fun podcast. So okay. If you are going to a local theater here in Sioux Falls to see a movie, Derrick just might be lurking in the background, like in the shadows.
That is true. That is true. I'm
So
stealthy.
yeah, you are. You are a stealthy movie aficionado and a state theater enthusiast. It comes to mind like two members of the general public that deserve a star on the State Theater Walk of Fame. And I think you are one of them, Derrick.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, okay, I know you're from Mitchell, South Dakota. And
Well, not quite.
okay.
Mitchell has importance in my movie-going history, but I'm actually from New Holland, South Dakota, which is a small town, about 100 some people, about 90 miles west of Sioux Falls. And I lived on a dairy farm several miles north of there. So I lived in true rural farmland, South Dakota.
Like extra rural.
Prior to becoming a city slicker, slitty boy, whatever you want to call it.
So, we are town. Like when you say you're going to town, like it's here.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, like the big towns, would still take another 15, 20 minutes to go to from our farm back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wanted to even go to a movie, that was 45 miles away in Mitchell.
Okay.
Because that was back in the day where we and this is kind of where part of my movie going story comes in, because I come from that era where in that geographical location where going to a movie was like a special circumstance and an event.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of that childhood element in me that kind of still sees that as a precious experience, even though I go to the theater more than most anybody I know. So that's where that comes from. But I did want to clarify that up front, because I am not from Mitchell, but that's the place where we go, like Saturday shopping day trips and stuff like that. And of course, if we ever wanted to see a big movie, that's where we went to Mitchell, because they had an indoor theater, the Roxy, and then they had the Starlight Drive-In there as well, which was also open when I was a kid, which I know you've been to a couple times before they closed down for good. So
it was such a bummer.
It was, but it was glad that it came back, because it opened, for those who didn't know, it opened a few years during the COVID pandemic in 2020 through 2022. And then, of course, once the world got slowly back to normal, they stopped showing up to the drive-in, so they closed it again. But it was nice while it lasted. So that was cool.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I felt like there was good attendance too, but it's not paying my bills. So, I mean, it's easy for me to say.
It was solid enough. It was very strong in the early going, when there was very few other avenues for entertainment. But as more and more stuff opened up and more competition came out, and people kind of got more settled back to their normal lives, that's when it changed. But yeah, those are the elements those are the places where I had like my original first movie going adventures. Because I know the first movie I went to as a kid in a theater was the original Home Alone, which is what dates me, but also is like quantum event for like these kids' family entertainment and all that stuff. So you see a movie like that and you watch the final 20 minutes of that and you laugh your head off as what would I have been, 6-year-old kid, that shapes you.
Yeah. That's so cool. What a great first movie.
Yeah.
So, do you remember going to see that? Like, you actually remember it? Oh my gosh.
Because I remember, because I think we went up there because I think we were taking like family Christmas photos of me and my brothers at like the J.C. Penney portrait studio.
Yeah.
And so I think that was my mom's treat, with like, okay, if you get through these photos, we'll bring you to the movie theater to watch Home Alone, because we know you'll. So that was the incentive to get through photo taking, which of course is, like pulling teeth for a bunch
Yeah.
of little boys.
Yeah. And still your favorite.
Of course.
Yes.
I love photos. I
It's your
love
favorite.
photos, which is
Yeah.
why I'm never in any of the ones that I post.
I know. Oh yeah, we should mention your socials so people can take a peek too.
Sure, yeah. I am on the Instagram at DERV Dude. That's Derv Dude on Instagram. You can find me under the Facebook under my name. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but you can find me on the Letterboxd as well as DERV Dude username as well.
Love it. Yeah, Letterboxd is still, I mean, it is so fun to like look at other people's stuff. I'm just bad at doing my own. Like, but it's fun to see what other people are
You,
watching.
you kind of have to get that drive of like, we kind of get in the habit of like, as soon as we finish watching a movie, a bunch of us are already hopping on our phones and jotting down our thoughts on Letterboxd. It's kind of a second nature, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
how we've become ingrained into doing that. Because like we have to let people know that we were here and that we watched this movie, and we have to get our thoughts into the world and all that stuff. But it's fun and it's great to find you know, a lot of the other local moviegoers. A lot of like when I go to a showing at the state, there's always a good chance that I'm going to see a good like 5-10 other people post their thoughts on the same movie from the same showing that I was at. So that's a really cool social element of it too.
It's so cool because I've always thought that movies are so dependent on the seat that you're sitting in, right? Like not the literal seat, but just the figurative one. Well, I guess the literal one too, but like where you're at in life, what's going on, you're going to have a different
Yeah,
opinion of that movie than
yeah.
I am.
and
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 so,
also watching it with people and an audience that shapes it too in terms of like your unified reactions to it all and all of that stuff.
yeah, like my absolute horror when watching Mother. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So you kind of start your movie going experiences in the Mitchell area, and
Hmm.
it feels like you still have like just, like a beating heart for all the retro theaters. Am I right there?
Yeah, I mean it's twofold. One, it's the appreciation of all the different theaters that populate this area, because like shortly after like I graduated like, from high school, some of like the older single screen movie palaces in the small towns started opening up near my hometown. Like in Platt, they had a theater called the Lyric Theater that opened up while I was at college in Augie. Armour has a movie theater called the Lorraine, so I've gone to those. Even in Sioux Falls here, like it's like every once in a while I'll go to like the West Mall, which is a bit more of like an older seasoned movie theater, but still has like 40 years of nostalgia in it or whatever. Or going to Del Rapids and
Mm-hmm.
going to the Dell's Theater there with its colorful neon marquee. I try to spread the wealth.
Yeah, you
I
do.
mean, because the State Theater, and we'll get into it. Like, but the State Theater, they got very specific focuses with their programming, where they're very actively trying to bring in stuff that the other theaters don't have, to help differentiate it. But that also means, like, as an active moviegoer who still goes to new releases on a weekly basis as they come out, that requires me to go to other theaters to get my fix, as it were. So that's where I enjoy it there. But the other thing of that, when we talk about old movie stuff, part of it too is just kind of the love of what we would call repertory cinema, the playing of older movies in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because certainly, because I remember like about 15 years ago, like the East Side Cinemark Dolly Farms Theater in town here, they would actually do like a classic film series every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. They'd play an older movie like Princess Bride or Rocky or Vertigo or what have you. And I would often make my way going there because I just found it very neat and novel to watch older movies in theaters, because those, and they're very sparse in special opportunities to watch those movies that you never got a chance to see because they came out decades before you were even born.
Right. Yeah.
So there was that. And then, of course, during the weird year of 2020, the theaters that chose to be open during that period had to show predominantly older movies because the Hollywood studios were holding off on opening new movies until the
Until
nation
Maverick.
recovered.
Yeah.
Yes. Tom Cruise saved theaters. That's
Mission
absolutely true.
Impossible. Hell yeah.
Yes. I know that very well because I ended up seeing that movie 22 times in theaters, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, it's a little bit there in here because I mean that movie is fantastic though, and that was such a moment. Like when
It
Tom
was.
Cruise comes on screen and says, you know, we're bringing people back to the theaters, and it's just like it was one of those where you just kind of want to be in the crowd for that, and so I was excited.
Yeah.
I was, yeah.
Yeah. And that was the case too, where like that movie was supposed to come out in the summer of 2020, but he held off on it for 2 full years,
Hmm.
just waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and that was a ridiculously huge success.
Such a
So
perfect moment, such a
it
perfect
was.
moment because
Hmm.
people were ready. We were
Yes.
ready. We
Yes.
s we were vaccinated, we had our masks, we were ready, like, "Let us out, like, we have things to
Yes.
do."
We need to get out. That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so I don't wanna get totally out of order. So I guess I'll start
Sure. Yeah.
with the fact that, you know, people that are listening, they already know the state theater history because I've gone through some of it. But,
Hmm.
you know, it opens in 1926. It's a theater for like vaudeville, but also for silent movies. And then
Hmm.
eventually it becomes a regular old movie theater. But there's nothing regular about this place. This place has always been super duper special. Like from the moment it opened, it was better than the rest. Like it was an elevated experience in
Hmm.
1926, and I think it's an elevated experience in 2026. So
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Yes.
So before the State Theater pushes pause in like the 90s, like
Hmm.
had you been to it?
No. No.
Okay.
So the State Theater closed. When the State Theater closed, I was 5 years old. and and so I was way too young for
Yeah.
it. My I was the oldest of like at the time three brothers, soon to be four. So we weren't getting to Sioux Falls on the regular at that
Hmm.
point because again I was still like an hour and a half out of town. Now I was aware in 19 because we were getting the Argus Leader at my place. We were getting it in the mail, so I was aware of the press in the summer of 1990 when it was closing down. And they made like a big hullabaloo about that because it was, and we'll get into it, but it was a very sudden decision
Yeah.
to close it. There's a lot of intricacies with why that had to happen, but certainly, it was quick. I had also been to other theaters in Sioux Falls during the 1990s, like when I'd visit my uncles and stay over for the weekend over there. But I just missed being able to get to the state, which was a bummer. But in a sense, in a way, it also kind of fueled the excitement for ultimately getting to watch a movie
Yeah.
there, which I think is very important to that because there's like when you're closed for 30 years, a lot of people are going to be curious because they just never had that experience. So.
No, when you were saying it, it's like it's almost like it happened how it should, you know? Like you weren't meant to see a movie before it
That's
reopened.
probably
Yeah.
true. I mean, the one thing I will admit that I did was I remember like in like the early 2010s as they're start going through the big restoration process, one of the things that they would do is they would have open houses at the State Theater on First Fridays. And I would venture out and go because they'd let you like go all the way up to the balcony and view the work in progress and stuff like that. And that was really my only up close and personal exposure to the theater prior to it opening in 2020. So at least I had that little tangibility, that little tease, if you will, to get excited for it.
Yeah, I want to steal Andy's Fat Dude Digs Flicks line of that was an amuse bouche. Yes, if you will. A little taste, just a little taste of what you're going to get. So, as the pandemic it sets in across the world, the
Hmm.
State Theater opens its doors. Like it is such
Yes, but
a wild experience.
it is. I mean, you kind of realize the timing because summer 2019 was the big announcement that Denny Sanford had donated the money and the city of Sioux Falls had chipped in a little bit to being able to work that. And I was even kind of surprised because I remember like it was a few weeks before they opened and they made that announcement like we're ready, and I was kind of taken aback. One
Yeah.
because it is a weird time to open a theater when hundreds of theaters across the nation are closed right now. We didn't have those restrictions in South Dakota, but it was still a little bizarre. Like, okay, this is interesting,
Yeah.
but also just kind of the disbelief of like, because the state had been closed for so long. They've been making progress for years and years and years, but there's just kind of that surprise of like, oh, this is actually going to happen now, and it's going to happen very soon, and I'll actually get to watch a movie there. It was, kind of a flurry of, sensation, but then we ultimately got to that night in December, and it was, a very fascinating and unique experience, but certainly one that was very exciting just in the moment, but also just for like the potential of what's going to happen from there on out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you attend the first show, the very first movie that's being played once it
Yes,
reopens, and that
yes,
was White Christmas.
that is correct.
Yay!
So this was December 11, 2020. I remember this vividly because I'm walking downtown that night. I'm getting there a little before 6 p.m. The theater doesn't open until 7, but I saw Allison, executive director of the State Theater, in the little ticket booth
Yeah.
in the front of the theater, the one that almost never gets used, but she was in there,
Yes.
and I was like, when do the doors open? She said, like, oh, 6 p.m. I'm like, okay, great. I'm just going to wait here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very exciting because I was the first one through the doors that night, just getting able to take it in and being able to look inside of it and how beautiful it was. It was a bit of a muted night because as this was opening in the middle of the pandemic. The State Theater was taking the due diligence of doing buffering on seating. So out of the 155 recliners that were in the theater, there were only about 60 to 65 people in the theater to buffer that. So it was, a very, it was a very tricky ticket to get in there, and tickets, of course, went very, very fast once they went on sale to get in there. But I was there. A bunch of the other crew from what was then Backlot 605 came for that. Casey, Sam, Brian, Blake, etc. And we watched White Christmas, a movie that had actually played at the State when it first opened, when that movie had first opened back in 1955. So there's kind of like that parallel as well. Like, here's a movie coming back, from decades, and fired up again on the brilliant, digital projector and sound system and all that stuff. It was a very awe-inspiring experience to be there that night and to kind of take in that seminal moment. I mean, the drawback of it was because, it was during COVID and because, things are so limited, it kind of kept that night from being kind of like the big event, the truly big event that it probably should have been.
Yeah.
But certainly, in the months to come following that, as things loosened up and we kind of started getting closer and closer back to normal, just the excitement over those next several months of just seeing more and more people showing up, at pretty much every showing that would happen there for like the next 6, 7, 8 months, getting their first experiences. It was always very exciting to see new people come through the doors and have that new experience as well.
It's interesting. Like, again, I don't want to go out of order, but it's like, okay, so you were talking about how like Cinemark would show like old movies
Hmm.
occasionally,
Hmm.
and I know the State Theater has done that obviously quite a bit. But I think, gosh, what a big difference. I don't know all the technical stuff like you, but just like the 4K projector and then the room, like, I don't know, it's just the ambiance, sure, but the like acoustics and everything, I don't know, it's like extra special at the State Theater to watch an older movie.
Yeah, I mean it's a delicate combination of new and old, because
Mhm.
it's theater that is very indebted to trying to replicate the original architecture, giving it a fresh facelift, of course, but trying to harken back to what it was 100 years ago. And then you're combining that with, like brand new seats and a brand new screen and a brand new laser projector and a brand new surround sound system because the original State Theater did not have surround sound
Yeah,
at all.
right.
So it's kind of that very delicate meshing of old and new that contributes to kind of creating that one of a kind experience, which is very special.
Super special, and, like, the whole concessions area that used to be seating, and so
Hmm.
that's fascinating too, and obviously much needed to have a concession, so I'm glad that
Yes,
they
yes.
made that choice. Okay, so you make it to that first showing, and
Hmm.
I feel like I know I'm going to say it wrong or whatever, but you kind of haven't missed one since. Like, you haven't missed a movie since, right?
I've missed a handful. There are life things that come up,
Right.
I've had like in the 5 years since the theater opened, like my brother got married, so I
Yeah.
go down there for that.
That feels important. Yeah, good idea.
I've had I've had both of my grandpas pass away. So like for example, one that you had mentioned as we were prepping this show was like you had mentioned like the mystery movie with Motel Hell. I was not there. So I
Oh,
missed that.
that's right.
So I was not there, but I've lived vicariously through your recollections
Yeah.
of that evening
Yeah.
with the stale beef jerky and all that fun stuff for that. So that was still nice to
Yeah.
have that at least.
Mhm. But I still think it's, like, quite the feat that you have seen so many movies at the State Theater. So, let's see, you missed a handful. So, do you have a running count on how many you have seen there?
Oh yeah. So this alludes into one of your other points as well. So I track this information on my Letterboxd account. As of this recording, on February 17th, 2026, let me pull this up here. I have seen 950 distinct movies at the State Theater
Are you
over the
kidding?
course of the past 5 years and 3 months.
That feels like so many more than I would have thought.
Yeah, and it's tricky too because the State Theater, for a single screen theater like the State,
Right.
they
Yeah.
cram in so much different programming on a single weekend.
Mhm.
They'll be playing like 4 or 5 or 6 different movies. It really just depends what they're up to. But I think that speaks to like, even though they're just, one screen, they can only have so much capacity between just the time on the clock and, employee shifts and all that. They really try to bring as much different kinds of programming to the theater as possible, from like new indie releases, to these repertory older classics, kids movies, late nights, foreign films, excuse me, everything in between. They really try to provide every week. They try to provide a good mix so that there's at least something, at least one movie out of however many they're showing in a week that'll interest um, each moviegoer. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of special, but that also keeps things very exciting week to week. Whereas just like where like other theaters, they might just get locked into like we're just showing one movie 7 days a week, but there's just so many things that can go on, and I think it just keeps things very fresh and very exciting.
Absolutely. And so, what do you think makes seeing a movie at the State Theater an elevated experience, like for you?
For me, I think part of it is like the focus on the movie that is being presented. Like when you go to a multiplex, they're showing like 8, 10 different things at once. Just kind of
Mhm.
this might come up as a little bit gross, but it's kind of like herding cattle through there,
Yeah,
just
right.
trying to get people to their
Yeah,
places. But here, at the State, it's only one screen, so therefore it's one movie at a time, and therefore you're able to give the attention to just that one movie that is playing at that particular moment. And sometimes the State will do things with the presentation to make that more exciting. Like a lot of times, like if like for some new releases, like what they'll do is they'll put together like a pre-show before the movie, where like they're playing like the music from the movie beforehand.
I love that.
Kind of,
Yeah, it's so cool.
like when they showed like Top Gun at the State, like they had like the songs from the Top Gun soundtrack playing before the movie, or like when I just went to some of the newer releases like Hamnet or F1, like they were playing the scores for those movies before the show as well.
Mhm.
So there's that. And of course, just being very adept to what each movie needs in terms of what it needs. Because like some movies like Hamnet, they're very delicate, quiet, character driven. Other movies like your F1s or your Top Gun Mavericks, they're very loud,
Yeah.
and they're meant to rattle your seats and all that stuff. And the State very wisely knows that no two movies are alike. Every movie needs to be treated in their own different way, which I think really helps with that as well. Where like when you go to a movie, there's a very good chance like that things have been specifically tailored for the movie that you're about to watch. But also then just kind of the streamlining of the presentation as well, because like compared to like a multiplex, you're not going to get a barrage of commercials on the
Yeah.
screen before the movie. You're going to get a very minimum set of trailers, like 5 trailers at max in most showings, if even that. So
They're like
like
showing you things that are coming up that they're really going to show.
yes,
Like, they aren't just saying, "Hey, there's a cool movie." Like, it's, "There's a cool
Yeah, like
movie,
this is
it's
this is the
playing
stuff that is
Thursday."
on this.
Yeah.
This is the stuff, like when they're showing a trailer, it's the stuff that's on the schedule,
Yeah.
stuff that tickets are already on sale for that they're going to play
Yeah.
in the next week or two. So that's very important as well. You're not
Mhm.
getting misled or anything, or
Mm-mm.
being pushed movies that are coming out 6 months down the line.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very focused on what this theater is actually going to give you. So that's cool too.
Yeah, it's like coming soon. No, coming this week. It's here.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
In 5 days.
Uh-huh. And I do say I have there's something that you said to me like once years ago that I've repeated several times, but it's about Maverick because I had never seen Top Gun. And
Okay.
so I asked you, I said, "Well, I've never seen Top Gun. Do I need to watch that before I see Maverick?" And you said, "No, they do a very good job of last time on Top Gun."
Yes, yes. They give you just enough that
They
you need to
do.
know
It's
to
so
get into it,
funny.
which I think is a big part of what helped that movie become such a big hit,
Yes.
because you didn't have to do your homework
No.
before the movie.
Yeah.
So that's always nice.
Yeah. It makes me giggle. I still think it's funny. Last time on Top Gun. And then, okay, so since you mentioned the sound system, what's the loudest movie you've seen there?
Let's see here, because I know Top Gun Maverick is one of them.
Yeah.
2001: A Space Odyssey had like some moments that I think were over 100 decibels, like when they do like the spec
Ah!
Zarathustra scene, like
Yeah.
ba ba ba, and like it's rattling the theater at
Oh my
that point.
gosh.
So of course they don't do that all the time. I mean, they're
No.
very
No.
the state is not here
Yeah.
to blow your eardrums out.
No.
It's used very very sparingly when they crank it up.
Oh my gosh, I went to see The Greatest Showman sing along with my mom.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I went by myself last year and I just felt like I couldn't belt it out, you know? So I had to
Hmm.
bring my mom this time. And the second it started, and it starts with the loudest song.
Hmm.
And the second it started, she's like, "I don't know, it's too loud." And like 3 seconds later, like everybody's singing and it's like perfect. It's like, oh, they know what they're doing. They know what's up. So being like their number one fan at the State Theater, which I mean, number one patron, maybe? Is that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably fair.
I
Yes.
feel like that's well earned. So, obviously there's just so much history at the State Theater, but history is interesting because different things pop out to different people. Some people are fascinated by the architecture. Some people are fascinated by the balcony that we can't use yet. Some people are
Yet,
fascinated by the
yet.
fact that they have like catacombs underneath. Like there's
Hmm.
all these different pieces of the history and it just depends on who you are, like what you're into. So what do you want people to know about the State Theater history?
There's a few things. The first thing I kind of want to focus on is kind of like the original state of moviegoing in Sioux Falls in general.
Mhm.
Because I know we can easily think about the state theaters like this movie theater that survived for 100 years. But I think part of what we kind of forget, especially for like people in my generation and younger, is you know the original heyday of Sioux Falls moviegoing was almost entirely centralized within downtown. Because there
Yes.
was like 7 or 8 of these different movie palaces strung along Phillips Avenue, in several blocks. Because you had like not just this, but also like the,
Hollywood.
the Hollywood
Yep.
Theater, the
Egyptian.
yep,
Yep.
the Orpheum actually used to play movies up until like the 50s before they were sold off and became strictly a theater playhouse. But the Orpheum was an actual movie theater for a period of time. And then a bunch of other theaters that have since been demolished and destroyed. The downtown, the tricky thing is some of these theaters were known by like multiple names.
Yeah.
So there was like the Strand, which then became the Granada, which then became the Downtown Cinema. That's the theater that ultimately played like the Sound of Music for almost a full year downtown straight.
Interesting.
There
Okay.
was there's a theater called the Olympia, which became the Royal, which became the Time. That's in the place where Pave and Louis Drug now
Yeah.
stands.
Yeah.
Princess which became the Dakota. That's where like the Van Art Studios is. The Strand Granada downtown, that's where like the Cutler Law Firm building was. The Hollywood, that was near 8th and Phillips, was demolished and is now the parking lot across the street from the Holiday Inn City Center. It's the parking lot just north of like the Sioux Falls Chamber building.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And I call this out because, you know, back in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, if you wanted to see a movie, for the most part, you had to go downtown to watch movies. And it took a while before the movie going kind of got outside of downtown. Because like it started with like the drive-in theaters. They started sprouting up in Sioux Falls in the late 40s. Of course, those aren't here around here anymore. But we actually did have drive-ins in Sioux Falls at a period of time. And then what kind of happened there was like starting in like the late 60s, movie theaters in Sioux Falls began to build outside of downtown, specifically tied with the malls, the rise of the malls in Sioux Falls. Because the West Mall, there was an original single screen West Mall that opened in 1968, not long after the mall itself opened. The Empire Mall opened a movie theater briefly from 1975 to 1986.
Interesting.
The Empire East Mall had the Empire 6
I
up until
remember
like
that.
2000,
Yeah.
which has now been absorbed into the Kohl's that is there.
Funny.
Yes. So, and I call this out because like there was that point of like, you know, movie going escaped downtown. And slowly but surely, these movie palaces downtown closed down one by one, were demolished, made room for parking lots and all that stuff. And so it got down to the point of, you know, by like the early 1960s, there were only like 3 movie theaters in downtown, which are the State, the Hollywood, and the Downtown Cinema. And then the downtown one dropped off on like by the end of the 60s. The Hollywood Theater closed in 87, and the State closes down in 1990. And so there's kind of part of that is like the State harkens back to that era where downtown, you know, obviously there's the new wave of downtown culture, of course, but back then, you know, if you want to see a movie, you went downtown. That was the place to be, where you'd bounce around from one movie house to another. So that's very cool. And I mainly call it out because, you know, I don't think we realize that. You don't really see the remnants of downtown movie theaters, save for the State. And even like as we're talking about the Orpheum, you know, a lot of people probably never knew that that was a movie house as well. They just think about it as like, you know, where they watch theatrical productions.
Yeah.
So there's that as well.
That is interesting.
The other things that I kind of to call out was, you know, the State, you know, as of recording, you know, we're jinxing ourselves. We're very close to the State getting to that 100-year mark.
I know.
But there were some very close calls. Like there were some instances where like this movie theater was not going to survive.
Yeah.
There was actually one such instance already in like the 50s. This is what I was doing my digging today. So this ties into a name that you might have heard in your research and stuff like that, which is Cliff Knoll, who was the longtime manager of the State Theater for nearly 30 years.
Jeez.
He started in 1956 and he retired in 85.
Yeah,
When the
and
State
then
was sold to a different theater.
And then he dies like shortly
In
after
93.
that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I did read his obituary. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the reason he came to Sioux Falls to manage the State in the first place was because the parent company in Minneapolis that owned the State Theater was going to raise it and tear it down. And so Cliff Knoll, who was at the time was in Grand Forks, managing a couple theaters there in North Dakota, he saw the opportunity because he was from South Dakota. He had briefly managed like a theater in Mitchell and stuff like that. So he was like, well, I can come back to South Dakota here. And so he pleaded with his bosses, like, let me run this theater. Let me remodel the lobby and the exterior of the theater. Give me some money to do that. And we'll be able to keep this place going. So he's kind of one of the key people that saved the theater, in addition to kind of his legendary reputation as a manager of the State Theater. I'm sure if you talk to like Diana or Allison about these sort of things, you may have heard like the concept of, like the ghost of Cliff Knoll haunting the State Theater at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big deal. Like he came in, he kind of brought the theater up from the brink of being shut down and destroyed. And that's kind of what helped to keep it surviving, you know, for the next 30 some years up until it actually did close. So the story of how the state actually closed down is very interesting as well, because when the State Theater closed in 1990, it was 64 years old. It had like these renovations in the mid 1950s, but by the time we got to 1990, this place was very run down.
Yeah.
And so at the time, the State Theater was one of several theaters that were owned in town by Midco. And that's right, the same Midco that does your cable and your internet and your landlines. They actually got started as a movie theater company.
What?
And only later on did they branch out into, we're going to do phone services, we're going to do cable services, we're going to do internet services. This is all
Mind
true.
blown. Yeah, mind
So,
blown.
so at the time, so in 1990, there was kind of like this movie theater turf war, as it was, because Midco owned 3 of the 4 movie theaters in town. They owned the West Mall 7, and they owned the Empire 6.
Okay.
And then there was a brand new upstart called Carmike who owned the Carmike 7,
Yeah.
which is on 41st and I-29. And so there was a lot of like competition between these 2 theater chains, because like they would like competitively bid like, which movie theater is going to get like to play Ghost, or which movie is going to get to play Home Alone, or all that stuff. And so there's a very competitiveness. And so at the time, the State Theater had become very run down. It was actually at this point in the city's bargain theater, where movies would play at like one of the other multiplexes, like the West Mall or the Empire, and then after they had played out for several months, they would come over to the State Theater, and tickets would be 99 cents a seat.
Yeah,
So
I remember.
it was kind of your bargain house.
Yeah, I remember Corey saying that tickets were $1.
Yes. So that's where the state was at this time. And of course, the state at this point had become very run down. Like the bathrooms were very out of date.
Rough.
The concession
Yeah.
stand was really taking a toll. And the big thing that happened was, so I've actually seen like memos of like what the state management were doing at this time. But the big issue that was going on at this time was, it was April of 1990, and the air conditioning system had failed at the state.
That's a lot of money.
And so there was a ticking clock here, because once you get to like June or thereabouts, it's going to get really, really hot inside the theater, and that's going to create a lot of upset patrons. And so there was all this debate about like, what are we going to shell out for, a new air conditioning system? Are we do that? Do we do all these other renovations? Do we sink money into this place, or do we cut our losses and close it down? And ultimately got to the point where they were like, we're not going to invest in the theater anymore.
Yeah.
We're going to shut it down. So that's why the theater closed in June 1990, because the building was in such disrepair at that point, that it just couldn't support that. I remember some coworkers telling me, like, around this time when they were watching the movies at the state as a kid, that they were seeing like bats fly up in the
I believe it.
throughout the theater.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea of where this place is at. So anywho, that's when it closed. And then you probably are aware of this. The following summer, there was the big fire downtown at the Henson building, which is right next door to it.
Yes.
Now that fire totaled the Henson building, which has now been replaced by the Phillips Center building where Dakota Bank is. But of course, the State Theater was right next door to that. And the firefighters, they managed to save the building, but there was like a lot of water damage to the theater. Like the basement was flooded, the boiler room was flooded, even like the main floor of the State Theater was flooded.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's funny because like I've talked about this with my boss at my work, who was a teenager when the fire happened. He had been working at the sister theater, the West Mall 7. So he was actually watching this fire go down the Henson building. He was sitting across the Phillips Avenue. He was sitting by Minerva's, watching the firemen put the fire out.
Yeah.
And then like the next day, he and his coworkers at the West Mall were all summoned to the State Theater, because they had to go in and basically rip out all of the seats from the main floor of the theater, because they had because they were drenched in the water that was used to fight the fire. So
interesting.
Now, of course, there are other things that we could get into that probably don't have time, but there's already the efforts going on at this point to kind of try and shift the focus of the state theater because there was already attempts to like make it more of like a concert venue as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yes.
a movie theater, but that did not last very long.
Good.
Yeah, yes, I would agree.
I don't foresee that. I don't think that ever could have been the answer. Like, I don't see that being the answer there. Yeah.
No. But anyhow, obviously that, kind of sets the theater back a little bit. And the great thing was that the theater itself didn't really have much for in terms of like structural damage
Right. Yeah.
or major. I mean, there was a lot of smoke in the theater stemming from the fire, but from what I've read, there was very little smoke damage as well and very little structural damage, just mainly just the water damage on the main floor and the basement slash tunnels of the theater. So that's good because obviously if the firefighters who were working back then hadn't done their due diligence, we could have easily lost the state theater at that point as well. Um,
Totally.
so,
Yeah.
so I call this stuff out because, when you look at these events, the state could have very easily gone away
Yeah.
and not have made it to this point.
Yeah.
I think it just makes the fact that it has reached this 100-year mark so much more impressive and so much more exciting, knowing that a lot of theaters don't make it to this point, and we're
Hmm.
lucky to have one that has.
We are. And I feel like, like you said, it's kind of serendipitous or whatever, where it's just like all of these close calls, but they all lead us to where it needed to go. So it kind
Yes,
of works out.
yes,
And then, like, also, I once owned a car that was so messed up that I didn't even fill up the gas anytime I got gas because I'm like, that's just a bad investment. So
yeah,
I totally get like how the air conditioner being broke is the thing that breaks like this delicate balance of
hmm
this business that isn't going well. And, it needed so much work. And we know that
yeah.
because the work takes a long time.
It sure has. I mean, even as I've looked, because I've done like my digging through newspaper archives, and you look at ads from newspaper ads of the state from like the 1950s, and they really made an emphasis on like, hey, we've got air conditioning.
Yes.
Part of the reason why you should come here is the
Yes.
air conditioning,
Yes.
and all that stuff. So that all part of the big equation in this.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine like sitting in a dark, hot room watching a movie. That doesn't sound great.
I mean, I'll say like I've had the opportunity to watch. I've watched a movie once from the current balcony of the
That's
State Theater.
right. Yes.
So I have been up there, and I'm sure you've been up there
Hmm.
through tours and stuff like that. But if you've been up to the balcony of the State Theater, there's a reason why it's not open. Well, there's several reasons. One of
Couple
the
of
reasons
reasons.
is
Yeah.
it needs to be finished, but also it is extremely unbearably hot up
So hot.
there.
Yeah.
You think it's going to be cool, but it's as far from cool as you're going to get.
Yeah. Heat rises, y'all. Yeah. It's rough. It is rough stuff. Well, I wanted to ask you about like kind of your top 5 movies that you've seen at the State Theater. And I guess I mean just movies that like it mattered that you saw them there. Like
Yeah,
mattered to you. I mean, just your own
yeah,
personal, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I definitely chalk this up to like experiences and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I've got a bit of a mix here of ones.
I would expect no less, Derek.
Yes, very nice, very nice. One of the first kind of more uproarious things that happened is this was back in November of 2021 when the state did their first ever screening of The Room, which if you're not familiar with the movie The Room, it is a bizarre melodrama.
It's a
Um,
bad movie.
yes,
It's
it
just
is an extraordinarily bad
not
movie,
good. Yeah.
but it has set a tradition at the State Theater because Greg Sestero, one of the stars of the movie, has come to the State Theater on a semi-annual basis. He's been there 4 times thus far,
Mhm.
showing up, to present the movie, to do, photo ops, and sell merch and all that stuff, and host the movie. Andy from Fat Dude Digs Flicks usually does a conversation with him before the movie. And then, of course, it's a very interactive screening where, like, you're yelling at the screen and you're throwing hundreds, if not thousands, of plastic spoons across the theater to
Yeah.
everybody. And it was I had seen The Room before, but I had never seen The Room like that, and it was such a riotous experience. So to set the stage here, this movie was showing 2 times that night at 7 p.m. and 10:30, and I had a ticket for the 7 p.m. showing. And when it all got done, I had such a great experience that I immediately went online on my phone to the state website and bought a ticket for the 10:30 show. because I just want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And so I have this rule that every time the room shows at the State Theater, I'm going to buy a ticket for every single showing because I know that's
Gosh.
a riotous thing. There's another movie that I'll do that for, but we have a section on the outline
Yeah.
for that movie, but we'll get there. Let's see here. I'm kind of packaging these two along because a big thing of, when it comes to theater like this that shows lots of old movies, there's certainly the joy in watching like movies that you love, but I think it's kind of important as well, to take in movies that you haven't seen before, kind of be introduced to new things. And so a couple of movies that I know like I was kind of awestruck by when I first saw them for the first time at a state screening, but which were hit classics at that point. One of them is Harold and Maude, which I know you have a very big affinity for. I
I
had never
do.
seen that movie until it played at the state in
Really?
2021 as well.
That's wild to me. I don't get it.
Well, but again, that's the interesting thing when it comes to state theater. Like they put a movie on the schedule, and there are people be
Mhm.
like, well, I haven't seen this before, and it's going to play at the States, so this is the perfect opportunity
Yeah,
to see this the best way that I can. And
totally.
how can I miss that?
Mhm.
So that was great. And that played, for a cult movie like that. I was kind of impressed how early on in the life cycle of the State Theater it played.
Yeah.
So that was cool. The other one that I lumped at this was The Conversation with Gene Hackman, which is kind of like the 70s
Yes.
analog spy thriller. It's great as well. A couple of riotous audience experiences. I kind of liken these together because these are both like brand new movies, single screenings, packed house
Ooh.
experiences.
Gosh.
I think you've seen this one. One of them was Slaughterhouse, which is a movie where Killer Sloth.
I could feel it coming real slow. I'm like, wait a
Yes.
second. Is this going to be Slaughterhouse?
Yes. So Slaughterhouse, this is a movie that the State Theater was lucky to get this movie
Yeah.
on its nationwide opening night. So we have a packed house for it, and nobody has seen this movie. Nobody knows what we're getting into. And then we watch this crazy tale where like a sorority girl adopts this sloth and the sloth proceeds to kill almost everybody
Yeah,
in the
everybody.
sorority.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and the theater was having a ball, and then
Yeah.
for whatever reason Steven decided like during the trails like he'd play like short little sloth videos from YouTube in between the trailers. It was very ridiculous. And so there was that. The other one that I kind of lump in with this because it's kind of the same effect was Hundreds of Beavers,
Yes.
which is another one of those insane laugh minute like
Yes.
when you're watching it with the crowd and it's like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
But I'm laughing like every 15 seconds and I'm just losing my absolute mind.
Huh?
That was all great. It's kind of, we'll talk a little about the late night stuff. We're watching all these classes, but there's kind of like an exciting moment when there's like this air of discovery in the theater where everybody is kind of discovering this movie for the first time together, and we're all just laughing our butts off. So I kind of lump those in together with that. I've done several like movie marathons at the state before. One that I hold dear to my heart was back in 2022. They played the Back to the Future trilogy back to back to back in one day over the course of this is around like New Year's weekend that year. So that was very cool. I enjoyed that a lot. In terms of like late nights, we'll talk about late night in this dedicated section a bit, but I think like my favorite ever late night experience at the state was Tammy and the T-Rex, which
Yeah,
is
that
this
was good.
which is this insanely ridiculous movie starring a very young Paul Walker and a very young Denise Richards about like a football jock, who dies and his brain is implanted into a dinosaur. And Denise Richards plays his girlfriend. Utterly, utterly ridiculous movie made in the wake of Jurassic Park for like 1,000th the budget of Jurassic
Yeah,
Park.
right. Even that's
absolutely,
probably too generous.
yes, absolutely. But I mean, they built out that dinosaur head for it, so at least they had the money for that. But
That's true.
but it's
Yeah.
an absolutely ridiculous movie. There's one particular scene that involves like a fight on the schoolyard between Paul Walker and a bully that had me gasping for air in the sense of like, how the heck did this get into a movie and make it this far to the point where it's actually playing out in front of my eyeballs? So there's that. One experience that I enjoy is speaking of new releases. One experience I remember fondly from a couple years ago the state opened a movie called Thelma, which starred June Squibb as a grandma who gets scammed out of her money online and has to get it back.
Yep.
This was another like, it's in the vein of like the Slaughterhouse Hundreds of Beavers tone, but it's like, but like 80% of the audience here was like senior citizens, and just
Perfect.
kind of bowling them over for a movie. Like, this is the same thing as like Slaughterhouse or Hundreds of Beavers, were like a completely different audience, but it's still a full audience, and they're laughing their heads off because
Yeah.
they're really getting the jokes. That got to a point where like, and I do this often, is if I have a really fun audience experience, I'm going to go back multiple times. So like with Thelma, like I saw this on like a Friday afternoon, and then I'm buying a ticket for the Saturday showing and the Sunday showing because I want to keep seeing it with a crowd.
Yeah.
Another one that I did that with for completely different reasons was The Substance, which played at the
Yeah.
state.
I was just thinking about that movie this morning. That it sticks
Yeah,
with you. It sticks with
it
you.
does. I mean, it was cool because like if you were there for that, the state theater did like this very elaborate pre-show to get you
Yes.
in the mood for the movie.
It was
They
good.
actually didn't show any trailers in front of the movie. It's like this pre-show's blasting you, and then they open the curtain and we're like, we are starting the movie right now,
Yeah.
which is very impressive. And then of course the movie itself, it's like a 2.5 hour gross fest, which also makes it very fun to watch with an audience to see like how they're going to handle this and stuff like that.
The chicken, every time the chicken just gets me, and it gets everybody. So yeah,
Yes. So that was a case where like, it opened on a Friday, and like I'm going back Saturday, I'm going back Sunday. And then I remember like they added a bonus screening later in October for it. I'm like, I'm going again.
You're like,
And then the Substance gets nominated for Oscars in March, and I'm like, they're going to show it again. I'm like, I got to go see it again. So I ended up seeing that movie 5 times there because that was very exciting. So
you just touched on the fact that they show the Oscar contenders. I think that's a
yes,
really cool pattern that they've been doing. I mean, how have they been doing that since they reopened?
yes. Going back to like the very first spring, 2021, which was a very weird Oscar year because it was a very weird movie year. But they'd still brought in like a bunch of the Oscar contenders. Like they'd play like Mank, David Fincher's Mank, and they'd play
Yep.
Borat 2 because Borat 2 had Oscar nominations, and some other stuff like that. So they did play, and they played Nomadland, which of course was like the big winner that year, which of course had ties because that had been partially filmed in South Dakota, so they really want to give that attention. So they played that for multiple weeks and all that stuff. Because the big thing that we had prior to the state opening was we were never guaranteed to get all the Oscar contenders in town.
Right.
Like the year before the state opened, I very much remember I actually drove to Sioux City one Saturday because I wanted to see Parasite and Jojo Rabbit. These are two movies that were going to become big Oscar players, and ultimately, they both won Oscars.
Yeah.
But Sioux Falls' multiplex theaters were not playing those, and so like if I want to watch them, well, I got to watch them here or wait until after they get Oscars and hope and pray that they show them. And they did ultimately, but it took a couple of months, and even then they only had like a handful of shows.
Is Parasite the one with like the chauffeur in the house? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. That's
fantastic movie. Yeah.
Yes.
And I saw it at the state theaters.
Yeah. It's again, it's a tricky thing of like people want to see these movies, they hear the buzz, they're like, and so the state has been very, very diligent of like during the January, February, March portion of the calendar, we're going to try and squeeze in as many nominees as we can. Like we are going to push it to the gills. We're going to show like the Oscar shorts nominees. We're going to show all the best picture nominees, as many other things in the categories as well. Like they've like at least for this year, they've covered at least 80% of the nominations with their lineup
That's
of this
cool.
spring, which is very impressive. So
again,
so
for one screen theater, pretty impressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a real. I really have to give the theater credit for finding the ways to squeeze this thing, reading the tea leaves very carefully to know like we think this is going to get nominated, so we're going to play it in January even before we know what the nominations are, and it's paid off very well. Because I remember like the weekend that the nominations came out, their big movie that weekend was F1, and lo and behold, F1 got a surprise Best Picture nomination, among other awards. So it worked out very well they always managed to put together very well, and they've really got it down to a science in terms of what they need to get in, what they want to show, and just and of course, a lot of these nominees would not be playing in other theaters in town. That's the big thing to keep in
Mm-hmm.
mind is, like your One Battle After Another's or your Sinners, those are obviously playing in the multiplexes. But if you want to watch The Secret Agent or Sentimental Value or Hamnet, well, you have to go to the state for that. And so that's a big thing. The state is really filling that need of bringing in the movies to town that we wouldn't have gotten here otherwise.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, Derek, okay, so I was on vacation and
Hmm.
I haven't seen Sinners. I want to see Sinners. It looks
Hmm.
so up my alley. Like this, I'm gonna like it. But anyhow, so I am on a cruise ship and I'm about to see a Broadway show. They're doing The Wizard of Oz. Not
Okay.
Wicked, The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
And the woman in front of me, now I can't decide if I'm more annoyed because my internet didn't work the entire time I was on the ship, even though I paid for it, or or just the situation, but she was in front of me watching Sinners on her
Oh,
phone.
no.
Like
Sorry.
evil. Like, first of all, what is
Yes.
wrong with you? There's a Broadway play in front of your face. Number
Hmm.
two,
Hmm.
you're ruining this for me.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
so I ended up like just positioning like my bag so I couldn't see her phone, but it was just like, but I also wanted to see it. Like,
Yes. Yes.
so confusing.
Yeah. It's a great movie. That's why the poster is behind me,
Yeah, that's
because
right.
that's my top movie of the year for 2025. And
Yeah,
it is coming back to the State Theater.
I
A
saw.
shameless plug for that.
Yes,
So
I
that'll be
saw.
there the weekend before the Oscars.
I know I gotta get a ticket. You know, don't don't buy tickets before I do. Okay. So we kind of talked a little bit about late night at the State Theater,
Yes.
and so let's talk about that more because it's a really fun experience. And also, I don't know any better. Like maybe other theaters do late nights. I don't know.
Well, yeah, many of like these, art house slash repertory places, they'll have their own late night movie programs going on. So the State Theater, they started their late nights back in February of 2021. They played The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, on a very, very, very cold February night back in
That's
2021.
perfect. That's perfect.
It was really cold, and so they usually try to do a late night roughly once per month, with the exception of October, in which they try to do a late night every single Friday in October. So either 4 or 5 late nights that month, depending how the calendar lands.
And those ones are pretty full.
Yeah, for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
because there are certain traditions that we have with late nights at the State Theater. So it's usually once a month. A variety of bizarre fare will come through your eyeballs, because we've had stuff like pink flamingos,
Yeah.
or what was I gonna say? Like your classic, like your Texas Chainsaw
Yeah.
Massacre or The Fly, or 1977's House, which is a very bizarre
That's such
Japanese
a
haunted
weird
house
movie.
movie.
But it was
Yes,
good. Yeah,
it
it was
was. Yeah,
good.
it's great. There are certain traditions, like for example, as we're recording this, we're in the midst of back-to-back Friday the 13th, because every time there's a Friday the 13th
Yeah.
date on the calendar, we have to play a Friday the 13th movie. So they just
Mm-hmm.
showed Jason Takes Manhattan Part 8 last month. Next month they're going to do Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell. So they've had that. We've kind of run through other things as well, like starting to run through Friday the 13th movies. We're starting to run through Halloween sequels,
Mm-hmm.
all that sort of stuff. So it's very exciting. It's a laid back atmosphere. It's like, well, it gets to be a late night because, first off, the movie doesn't start until everybody's in the theater. So it might be a 10 or a 10:30 show, but it might take an extra 10, 15 minutes, because theater wants to make sure that nobody misses, these one-time only screenings of these movies. There are no trailers in front of these movies. Steven will come up to do like an in-person introduction, and then Casey and Sam will come up. They'll do an intro to the movie. They'll usually be dressed up akin to the movie, for example. So that's always fun. Yeah, and most of the times these theaters or these showings are full.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about things like the late night mystery movies that happen every October. That's how we saw Motel Hell at the theater. Or last year we had Day of the Dead, so that's an annual tradition there for that. The Friday the 13th are an annual tradition. It's a very exciting time to be there. Again, usually we see a lot of our mutual friends there
Mm-hmm.
at those late nights as well, so it's nice to finally see them and catch up during those show times as well. So it's very exciting. Like I said, usually once a month. As of this recording, like tickets are like a third of the way sold for Jason Goes to Hell at this point. Late nights are very popular places to be, so
Mm-hmm.
be sure to check them out.
And it's just a fun, different thing to do downtown, too. I think my favorite part of the State Theater ever since it opened is the fact that, like, you can go see a movie, and when it's done, you're downtown. Like, you
Yeah.
just can pop
Yeah.
and go anywhere, do anything. You can go shopping, like,
hmm
you can get a drink, you can eat dinner, you can, just walk
Yeah.
around, enjoy.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I mean, I know a lot of people, like, they'll pregame at, like, like Fernson or something
yeah,
like that before the late night as well. So that also adds to the larger event vibe of the
yeah.
evening. So that's just nice
And
to be there.
they have ice cream now, Derek. Do you know that?
I have not had their ice cream yet. This is very tempting.
Fantastic. It's really good.
Boy,
So if we
I gotta try
pregame,
that.
let's pregame that. Our pre-movie
Fun.
ice cream.
Nice.
Okay, so Rocky Horror.
hmm
So this is a fun topic because, like, I don't know, I was a theater kid, so Rocky Horror, obviously, it's like a prerequisite,
Yes.
but it's like reading The Great Gatsby essentially for theater kids. And after years and years of anticipation, the State Theater finally got to take on the role of host
hmm
and do they're called Shadowcast?
Shadowcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Screenings of Rocky Horror. Because there was I think they were a little nervous to do this, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, when the theater opened, there's certainly that list of titles like, when are you going to show X? When are you going to
mm-hmm.
show Y? And
Well, for me,
Rocky Horror is on that list, obviously.
yeah, definitely.
And so it's kind of like a twofold responsibility. On one hand, you're like, how do you make this like the ultimate, even for a town that's had like various Rocky Horror showings, across the decades, there's always a thought of like, how do you make this like the ultimate Rocky Horror experience? But also, how do you do this in a safe way that isn't going to damage the theater
Ah,
in the process?
yeah.
And so that's why it took a few years after the opening for them to finally figure it out, because it wasn't until 2023 when they finally uh, did showings of Rocky Horror at the State. And they figured out the logistics. Like obviously there's an increased staff presence there.
Mm-hmm.
The spotters in the balcony watching, for uh, things going on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's, they're checking bags and stuff, making sure nobody's
Mm-hmm.
bringing in rice or chickens or whatever to make it a chaotic evening. But they also, of course, they prep these, prop bags that everybody gets with their paid ticket at the theater, so you can do like newspaper over the top of your head, or the party favors, or the cards, or all the toilet paper, all that stuff, plastic gloves, all that stuff. So there's that. The state has also partnered with Premier Playhouse every time they've done this, because now they do these 2 times a year. They do it in October, but they've also started doing it in June for their Pride Month celebration as well. But anyhow, they have partnered with the Premier Playhouse every time to do these shadow casts. And there's certainly like rehearsals that go on at the state, to prep the cast for it, make sure it all goes on, because there's not just like the performance aspect of it. It's not, I mean, it's kind of takes the same amount of effort as like an actual like stage production.
Yeah.
Because there's like all the lighting cues that are going on, you got to hit your marks. And of course, you're doing it all in sync to the movie, so there's the timing, like the movie's playing behind you. You've got to rattle off your lines, in sync. You got to perform the songs, in sync with the movie soundtrack. A lot of effort that goes into there for that. And just, the efforts, of course, just getting people into the theater, and, having Premier Playhouse folks, like guide you to your seat and all that stuff, and ask if you're a Rocky Horror virgin, because if you are, you're going to get called out, as part of the pre-show experience where all the virgins get inducted into the show and all that stuff.
And this is like an 18 and over kind of show.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it is. It is adults only.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Definitely.
For that reason. So
yeah.
So like when I talked about the room, I said like that's one of the movies that I will buy a ticket for every showing. Rocky Horror is the same way. Even if there's like an 8 p.m. show and a midnight show, I'm like, I'm doing them both. I'm going to be totally exhausted when this gets over with at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
But it's worth it because the excitement in the theater is absolutely palpable.
Mhm.
There's just, it's a unique energy that no other movie, not even The Room, provides. And so it's just really cool to be part of the theater for that.
I totally agree. It's such a fun experience. I'm so glad that they're doing it, and I'm glad that they're making it semi-annual.
Yes. And tickets always go quick
They
for the
do.
movie as well.
They're a
You
little
got to
bit
be on
more
the.
expensive, but they go so fast.
I
So
mean, it's more expensive because like part of it's going to like the playoffs, for
Well,
their
yeah.
efforts, part of
Yeah.
it's going to like just the materials because again,
Mhm.
you're getting these big prop bags and all that stuff. It's a pricier ticket, but it's absolutely worth it
Totally
because
worth
the
it.
experience is worth it.
Yeah, I love the bag of the stuff, so you don't have to you don't even have to know anything about this movie. And like a coworker, she had never even seen it, and she went to go see it with a bunch of friends, all dressed up. It's just a great time, and it's a fun, definitely community sort of experience. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I definitely feel like before I get into the last question, I think community is such a good way to say it because I feel like, I call you my movie friend, and I
Oh,
have,
thank you. Yeah.
but it is such a sense of community. And I feel like that community kind of connected over the State Theater. It connected over the pandemic. It connected. I think that's so interesting that the pandemic kind of created this little group of people talking about movies, and then the State Theater ends up being this kind of third place for
Yes.
you guys. And guys, it's a
It's a
whatever.
non-binary term. The way
Yes,
yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I just mean you guys. But yeah, I just think that the movie friends comprise of people that want to talk about movies before or after the movie. And so it's
Yeah.
really cool to see how fluid that is. And it's definitely anybody's welcome to stand there and talk about the movie that we're going to see or just saw. And it's fun. It definitely makes it a part of community experience.
Yeah, I mean, certainly our group had started building prior to the pandemic and prior to the state opening, but it's impressed me how many new people I've met specifically through the state.
Yeah.
People that I've run into specifically because I keep seeing them at showings and they keep seeing me at showings. Getting to know those people and keep seeing them pop up at things. So that again, it's tough, because back in the olden days, you used to have more kinds of places for that. The video store, for example.
Yes.
That's a relic gone by too, but that was the third place for people to get together
Definitely.
and talk about movies as well. We
Totally.
don't have those anymore.
Yep.
I mean, you can try and do that at a multiplex, but it just feels there. And just again, it's the focus of the State Theater. The fact that when you're going there, it's just one movie, and you're going to go in there with like-minded people who are there, excited to see that same movie. You were able to find the connections there and all that stuff. That's a really helps make a place like this special, is because just the sheer amount people that I met. I certainly would have met people like Diane or others
Yeah.
like that too through the theater as
Yeah.
well. So that's important too. It's cool that we get to see each other, because some of them, they'll have private birthday parties and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And get to meet up for that as well. It's a lot of fun. You're absolutely right. It's certainly the community that's built around the State Theater group, the many people that are loyal to the State Theater and keep coming, every week or every other week and stuff like that. It's very exciting to see, a lot of familiar faces every time you go to the theater at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And you are the familiar face because you're at most of the screenings. Yeah. They should definitely just have a fixture or something for you. Derrick's perch. Well, essentially there's a seat, but we'll keep that to ourselves. Okay, so what do you kind of see for the future of the State Theater? What new history do you think it's going to be a part of? Where do you see it like growing from here?
Yeah, that's a good question because, like from the moment the theater opened, I felt like this 100th birthday was kind of like the goal once the
Yeah.
theater opened.
Yeah.
And it's great to get to that point, and certainly the fact that the state is kind of trying to make a big hoopla
Mhm.
over this year as possible because they're doing like the fancy 100th birthday movie series and stuff like that,
Yes.
and they're doing things like because you were at the general one of the general showings, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So with them bringing in like the organist from
Which
Fargo
was
and
cool. It was so cool.
yes, yes,
I'd never seen a silent movie with a live accompaniment before, and especially to then see it in a setting which it was meant for, I mean,
yes,
just so extra special.
yeah. But it also kind of hints at like, it kind of hints at like some of the goals that the theater has because certainly
Mhm.
there's still an effort toward, fundraising, trying to finish the other areas of the theater. Certainly with the organ stuff, obviously one of their big pipe goals is to get that Wurlitzer organ restored as well, so they can actually do more stuff like that or have
Mhm.
more showings like that, for example. But also getting like finishing the balcony,
Yeah.
finishing the basement, finishing the second and third floors, all that stuff. There's still a lot of stuff that they want to get done with the theater, and certainly there'll be efforts, continuing, to raise those funds and hopefully get there as well. But I guess the one thing I can hope for is, not only hoping that as diverse, a lineup of programming as the theater has, I just hope it only gets more diverse, that they keep finding more and more stuff to bring in more and more crowds. And I just hope in general, more and more people discover the theater, come to the theater, come more frequently to the theater.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, you know, the theater is working very hard. It's open almost every single day at this point. It feels like, but there still feels like there's more that can be done. And I just hope that they are able to get to those points because I think it's only because what they've done for Sioux Falls moviegoing has been a blessing at this point.
Mhm.
And I know, as much as they've done thus far, I'm just excited that there's so much more that they can do. And there are so
Mhm.
many more years of movies ahead.
Yeah, that's exciting. It's so true. The State Theater holds like such a special place in my heart for a lot of reasons.
Hmm.
I've had a lot of important moments of my life there, and
Hmm.
it's not like, I would say probably for both of us, but definitely for me, it's not like just a place to watch a movie. um, and it's definitely just such a landmark in downtown Sioux Falls. It's so important that it's there. And I always have to say it's also like such a great picture opportunity, like selfies.
Oh yes, yeah.
They really pop there.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll be in like the lobby, and I'll see people come through, like senior pictures or whatever,
Yes.
where those
Yeah.
or like date photos or
Prom.
wedding
Yeah.
photos or whatever, where they'll stand under the marquee or they'll pose like in the back of the theater by the red doors, all that stuff. People show up
Mhm.
there for photos all the time,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's a gorgeous place, so I can't blame them.
Definitely. Yeah, seeing a movie there, it's like such an elevated experience because the theater is like really committed. They're committed to like preserving their history. They're also committed to like showing you a great movie. They're committed to like having awesome staff. And so just like we talked about the projector quality and the sound system and the ambiance,
Hmm.
but all of it makes it like super memorable and kind of like taking a step back in time. And there is nothing like seeing a movie on the big screen where you get your ticket, you buy your popcorn, you wave to Derek and find your seat. And you take in the history at the State Theater in downtown Sioux Falls. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate you coming. It's very exciting. And also, like, just if you had any final thoughts or things that you feel like that we didn't touch on about the State Theater or about like your passion for it or your plea for people to like buy a ticket and show up.
I do want to shout out the staff real quick
Yes,
because they're a huge component of making this theater work. Because
absolutely.
obviously, there's only a handful of full-time employees at the theater, plenty of like regular like shift staff, a lot of volunteers that help make the movies run as well, like the ticket scanners and stuff like that. They all do a great job of, you know, making each of those experiences as best as they can,
Yeah.
helping, getting people their concessions quickly, getting them through the ticket scanner quickly, keeping an eye on the presentation, making sure that there aren't like talkers or distractors during the movie and stuff like that.
People on their phone.
Exactly. I mean, they're a vital part. I mean, we don't have movies at the State Theater without those staff members and volunteers
Mm-hmm.
helping out to make those worth it. So I feel it's important there too. And another thing I'll also call out is, you know, all the staff members, have participated in a state staff pick series where like each staff member like gets to pick a movie that's
Yes.
beloved to them and they get to show that at the theater. So we've had fun stuff come in there like what was there? Like The Mummy 1999 or Drop Dead Gorgeous or Clueless or, Legally Blonde, stuff like
Yeah.
that. That's a fun part too, is like, it helps remind like the people who work at the state are movie lovers as well.
Yeah.
And they have, it's not just a job, they have a passion for cinema, just like people who go
Totally.
to the movies there. And it's great to kind of bask in, kind of see, what excites them movie wise, and getting to share those opportunities with them where they like, here's a movie that I love that's important to me, and I want to share that with you, the moviegoers to Sioux Falls. So that's really cool too.
Are you low key telling me that I need to work there so I can see Mrs. Winterbourne on that big screen?
I mean, it wouldn't hurt. It
I
wouldn't
know,
hurt.
right? It might be my only chance. Honestly, the only person buying a ticket to that is me. Well, I guess probably you. But yeah.
Well, the only main thing is, does a high quality enough version of Mrs. Winterbourne exist?
Probably not.
That's
I
the
have a
big thing.
DVD. That's probably the best
Yeah,
quality.
your full screen pan and
Yeah.
scan DVD of Mrs.
Yeah.
Winterbourne.
Yeah.
I
I'll
mean,
just
and if
bring
that
it.
falls through, maybe we can watch Baby Boom instead, because I know that one has
Yes.
a good
That is good.
Blu-ray that we can use for that.
Yeah. So at least we have that. That's good. Oh my
So
gosh. Yeah. No, the staff there is amazing. And I will say, if I did take forever to scan your ticket, I'm sorry. Because anytime I volunteer, I cannot open that thingy and do the thing. So I'm a very bad volunteer.
you're great. And I should also mention, nowadays, like pretty much any time I go to a kids matinee at the State Theater, because oftentimes like they don't have enough like family friendly trailers to show.
Oh,
So a
sure.
lot of times they'll show your experience Sioux Falls spot in front of the movie. So every Saturday morning I get to see local Lou on the big screen.
Yay!
So
I love it. Thank you. That's cute. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, do you think there's anything that we forgot to talk about, or do we feel good about this?
I feel pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
I would just get into more weird minutia, if anything, but I think we've left it on a good note.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like, I have questions about like the newspaper articles and things like that, but
I mean, if you want, go ahead. You got
okay.
time, but
Yeah. Okay. As long as it's not like infringing too much.
no.
Okay. So you have quite the archive of State Theater news clippings.
Yes.
And these are comprised of everything from like articles to
hmm
just what's it called? I don't know what it's called when it's just telling what movies are going to be
So like
shown.
the movie schedule, the movie ads,
Okay, movie ads.
timetables. Yeah.
Timetables. Yeah, okay, yeah, those, which is super interesting to see what was playing when and
hmm
like the ones that stick around and the ones that
Yes.
don't.
The one. Yep.
So,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, just I want to hear a little bit
Sure.
more about that.
Yeah. I mean, part of my original connection to movies as a kid, because again, I didn't get out to the theater that much, but we
Mm-hmm.
would get like the Argus Leader and the Mitchell Daily Republic papers at my house. So part of my kid obsessiveness with movies was looking at these newspaper ads, because that's how you, back then in the era before Fandango, just being able to pull up showtimes on your phone, you had to read the newspaper to know when the movies were playing. And of course, they had to advertise the movies in the paper as well. So that's where I have that nostalgia for that lost art at this point. But to your
Well,
point,
Yeah, you also are a physical, like, media consumer, so, like,
Yes,
you love a
yes,
DVD, you love an album,
yes.
and so it doesn't
Tactile. Yes.
Yes, so it makes sense that you would also love a newspaper.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's where that kind of came in there. To your point, I mean, it is also fascinating because like part of what I've always liked to go through is I've always liked to know like what movies have played at the State Theater in the
Mhm.
past during its heyday. And it's all, as you mentioned, it's kind of fun because like there are times where like it's playing like big movies that like, oh, the state actually did play Gone with the Wind back in 1940, or they
Mm.
did play The Godfather, or they did play Footloose. But then just as easily, there are movies that they play at the State Theater that are completely forgotten to time. Movies that I could rattle off and you would have no
No
idea what it
clue.
was. They might
Yeah.
even it might even have like some big stars in it that but it's certainly
Yeah.
not a title that you do know. And that's just kind of part of the ephemeral nature of movies is, you know, you have this picture of what like 70s movies were like or 80s movies were like. That's just because those are the ones that have stood the test of time and you
Right.
remember through
Yeah.
there. And there's stuff that, are in theaters right now that are going to get forgotten in 5,
Mhm.
10, 20 years as well. And it's just kind
Definitely.
of interesting snapshots of like, what was popular culture like, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, etc.
Mhm.
So that's what kind of makes things very fun there. As well as just kind of seeing like, what the state were doing. They did things like they did late night shows back in like the 70s as well, playing random stuff like Monty Python and the Holy Grail or Night of the Living Dead or stuff like that. They used to have like kids movie series on Saturday mornings and stuff like that. Uh, and just fun stuff like that. As well as just getting through the history and seeing like random stuff pop up. Like I was looking today at a photo because like in 1964 the state was the theater that showed the first Beatles movie, A Hard Day's Night. So they had like photos of like kids standing outside the theater on
Sure.
line on Phillips Avenue
For
just
sure.
to get tickets for the
Uh-huh.
movie, which is then not going to play for like several weeks after
Yeah.
that.
How cool.
And so the craziness of, just reading these articles and stories of like, yeah, we had like nearly 1,300 kids in for a screening of a Beatles movie and they were screaming their heads off and all that stuff. Fun stuff like that. Just to kind of get getting the idea, like, what the vibe was like at the theater back then, what brought in the crowds and all that stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, it's fun. Like, do you have any plans of what you're gonna do with this archive? Or is it just for your own
I mean, I haven't
delight?
I haven't done any formal stuff. I mean, I will say I have shared some of
Yes.
my findings with Allison as part
Yes.
of the 100-year celebration. I
Mhm.
know some of that stuff is going to get used as
Yes.
part of some of the stuff that's going to happen at the theater later in the
Mhm.
year. So we'll see what comes up out of that. But, we'll see. I mean, again, this is stuff that is accessible there. Like, you can, if you're savvy enough, and are able to pull up like newspaper archives online, you'll have the same access that I do.
But
But it
not
is,
the same passion and dedication.
that's probably true. I mean,
It
it's easy
is.
enough. It's all in the digital space, so it's not that hard to just gift like, here's a bunch of stuff. Or here's
Yeah, you're making it sound too easy though, because it's not. Because first of all, theater can be spelt two different ways.
yes, yes,
Also,
yes.
the word
State is a
state,
very general word.
real common. So, I mean, I know that you do your diligence or whatever, and I mean, it's hard to find some of this stuff. So, I don't
It is,
know.
and I know you've had your experiences digging through
Yeah.
online digital newspaper
Yeah.
archives too.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you know where I'm coming from on this.
Yeah, and at least they're digital, so we don't have, like, inky fingers, like back in the
Yes.
day, or we'd be at
I
the
mean,
library all the time with microfiche. Yeah.
I have spent so much time just going through microfilm of like
Mhm.
in the Augie basement
Sure.
or on the downtown Maine library branch. I
Yep.
have had those experiences, and that that's fun. It's kind of like
It's fun,
like
yeah.
the investigative reporters in the 70s and 80s movies digging through the archives, trying to
Mhm.
find the clues and all that stuff. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that technology has made that somewhat easier to
Yeah.
dig through history on that front.
Absolutely. No, I think you probably have like the most comprehensive collection of newspaper articles on the State Theater, FYI.
That probably good. I mean, I'll have to figure out some good uses for that. I just kind of clip stuff, but you kind of bring to the forefront like there could be a greater use for this beyond even what I imagined.
Well,
So
there
we'll see.
is.
We'll see.
Yeah, because like personally, you can always contact the Siouxland Heritage Museums. And
Okay.
especially since it's digital and you can fill out like a little form and then give it to them. And that'd be cool. And then like I've donated a couple things to the Siouxland Heritage Museums, and I always think like in like 30 years this is going to be on display somewhere and it'll say that donated by Lori Kent. That's
Very cool.
exciting. Like I don't
That's a
know.
good. I mean, that's a good thought. I certainly hadn't thought
Yeah.
about that in that extent, but you're putting some thoughts in my mind about how that could come to fruition.
Well, I just think that you should go down in history for this. Like,
Okay.
I
Okay.
just want to make sure that it is noted. Like, you are in the footnote. Like, it says, like, asterisks.
Uh,
Like, yeah, I live for that.
Lovely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate your time tonight, and I appreciate like getting to kind of geek out a little bit about the State Theater on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun, and I am excited to see what else you do with
For the
this
100
little
years. Yay!
with this other mini series of sorts. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I'm glad that you've uh, initiated doing this little project, because it is a big event, and it's
Yeah.
something that should be kind of ruminated and celebrated, and looking back at where this theater has come. And it is a perfect subject for a history podcast like yourself. So I'm
Aw,
excited.
thanks, Derek. You're so nice. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming.
All
All right. I hope you guys really enjoyed that interview. I had such a fun time talking to Derek a couple weeks ago, and I'm so glad I finally get to share it with you guys. And Derek, thank you for your time, your passion, your love for the State Theater. It's an absolute blast always talking movies and memories and all things cinema with one of my movie friends. You can catch Derek on Fat Dude Digs Flicks. There's two different podcast that he is a part of there. One is The Balcony, and the other is the Criterion Collection. Both hosted by Andy from Fat Dude Digs Flicks. And it's so fun because these are some of the, I don't know, some of my favorite voices in local movie fandom. So it is definitely a great, fun podcast to listen to. Now, there's one more person that we're going to talk about. This is going to be quick. I promise. I know this is a long episode. I'm sorry, but there is one more person to shine the spotlight on. And when you shine the spotlight on this person, they're going to glitter. They're going to shine because it is who I like to call Diane the Diamond. So Diane Olson, perhaps you've seen her dancing, just kind of moving and grooving at a Levitt to the Falls concert. I don't know if you've really been to Levitt at the Falls if you haven't seen her dancing. I mean, it makes my night every time. Or possibly you have been greeted by her beaming smile when you entered the State Theater because she volunteers there. Diane can often be found scanning tickets, but that isn't all she does at the State Theater. Diane is an enthusiastic history advocate and has been working hard behind the scenes of the State Theaters long before the doors reopened, from cleaning to cataloging artifacts. She just brings this infectious energy, pure joy, and honestly, she has become part of the experience. You're not Diane. She definitely has the passion of someone who understands the value of history and the importance in protecting it and preserving it for future generations. She's not just volunteering, she is stewarding a piece of Sioux Falls history through time. And I'll tell you this, I am deeply and genuinely grateful to know her. Diane is one of those rare people who gives her energy and her heart to things so graciously and so generously. And she does it all with a smile, and she really means it. So Diane, she is a pure delight. She is a treasure of the theater. She is a spark of joy in our community. and she is an absolute diamond through and through. That's why I think she's Diane the Diamond. So I just wanted to make sure to give her a shout out in this series about the State Theater's history, because she definitely needs to be in the history books for this one, guys. Diane, if you're listening, thank you. Sioux Falls is better, brighter, and more fun because of you. And thank you guys for being here today. Thank you for listening to another installment on history of the State Theater as we're celebrating their 100 years of being here. How amazing. I'm so thankful and grateful for you guys for stopping by and checking out the Local Lou podcast. You know what? We're going to keep going with this series, so come back for more. I will catch you next time on the Local Lou podcast.